be able to deal with the customer, skilling aid going to help. So depending on the business you are in, we have to figure out, are there any structural process issues coming in the way of change? They could be to do with processes, they could be to do with compensation, they could be to do with overall how leaders approach training, etc. But you have to list down, structural issues. I'll give you another example. About a year back, we wanted to change the behavior of our frontline staff towards customers, and we have about 700 frontline staff distributed in 209 offices. So as we started talking to them in terms of the skills they need to have, they gave us a list of 178 items which were coming in the way of service, from simple things as inadequate technology, scanners not being available at the front end, empowerment to waive rupees 100 charges for the customer, one view of the customer on the system. Like that, they gave us 178 items. And till the time we were able to solve the key issues, we did not see any impact on our customer satisfaction scores. The moment we started solving, since October last year, some of these structural issues, then the skills given to these people to be able to handle a customer came very handy, and that's when sometime in June, July this year, we are seeing a fantastic impact on our customer satisfaction scores. So that's what I mean by structural process changes. Obviously, supervisor enablement is the second point on this slide, which is to say that if you are training people, their supervisors must understand the same language, must speak the same language, and they should not, become insensitive to the inputs being given. The biggest, damage supervisor can do is once a person comes back from a learning intervention, the supervisor says, okay, you have learned this, now let's get back on the job. So he is dismissive of the learning input. So we have to make sure supervisors understand it, speak the same language, and they're able to supplement the capabilities in learning by actual, value addition, questioning, and review, so the capability becomes very strong. Third one is on integration. So, unless you integrate the L&D system with processes of recruitment, onboarding, performance management, goals, KPIs, incentive schemes, all this has to work in tandem. So, limited point I'm trying to make, on this is that L&D is not a magic bullet. Make sure that all of us as practitioners lay down the enabling conditions very clearly and fix accountability so that all the investments that we make in learning actually can see light of the day, and the business head can see, the impact coming on business results. I'm moving on now to slide number 8. And these are just some clippings I picked up from Eco-Times. As you know, we are indeed passing through very adverse environments. And if you notice, in this adversity, actually, many, many good organizations have started leaning towards building new capabilities, whether it's Nokia or Unilever or Godrej or ITC. You can see from these, clippings that they are saying this is the right time to focus. Because if we are not expanding, because we're not certain of the environment, if we're not pushing for growth, it is a good time to revisit what capabilities we have and what we need in the future, and use this time very well to build the capability. It has double effect. A, it gets you ready for the future. B, it passes a very strong signal to the people that we will indeed invest in them so that they are able better prepared. Otherwise, the short answer could be, if we don't have the right people, go and hire new, right? But that is not a sustainable answer, right? And therefore, it's important during these times to actually increase our focus on learning and development so we're able to provide the right environment for the future, in the organization. And I will simply end by saying that the only thing worse than training we can do to our employees, is having them leave. But actually, even worse than that is that you don't train them properly and you have them stay. So you have less than competent people, you have not fired them, neither have we developed them, so I don't know how we will get our business results. So that's, in a nutshell, my key messages of what will make learning and development more effective, why is it needed in today's very adverse environment, and if you have the right enabling conditions, it is not very difficult to measure the ROI of L&D linked to business results. There is, an organizational health index database that McKinsey has, which simply says that top quartile companies which build capabilities have an above average profit margin of 67%. This is their database and their research. And therefore, from all angles, I am pretty convinced that this is one of the most critical vectors, if fired right, if done right, in a particular environment, which will help enable and achieve superior organizational results. So that's all I had to say. I'm more than happy to receive questions.
Thank you, Rajat. This is Vikram, and we have a question from Rashi Mahato. And Rashi is asking, how does one measure the L&D effectiveness in general?
So I'm going to deviate away from, all of us in this profession, have learned the Kirkpatrick model, which measures effectiveness at various angles. I'm a big fan of measuring, L&D through business results. So let me give you an example. We set up an L&D, separate vertical about a year back. We were pretty convinced that if we are able to set up a vertical with different kind of, mindset, we'll be able to impact business results across our group. And the measures we have taken for this vertical are directly related to our business measures. So, specific to our organization, we said, will L&D help us generate productivity at the sales manager level? Will it help improve agent productivity? And will it help us retain, our sales managers, better? We have taken these three, and what we have done is then drawn what are the inputs that will impact these vectors. Some are L&D specific, some are business specific. So let's say the quality of recruitment and the way you onboard the sales manager will also impact retention. So we made a list of things that impacts retention, and we said that learning and development will take charge of 3, and HR has to take charge of 2. Based on that, we are monitoring month on month what is the impact. So my recommendation to you, Rashi, is that be bold to take business impact measures, but also make sure that other factors that impact those results are taken charge of by respective people. That's the way I would go.
Thank you, Rajat. The second question is from Akansha Jain. And Akansha is asking, line managers usually understand the importance for technical and functional training since it is in direct relation to the work they do. How do we as L&D professionals make them realize the criticality of soft skills learning and leadership development?
Yeah. Pretty pertinent question. And I presume, Akanksha, what you mean by soft skills really is to do with, so skills like, managing customers, skills like, how do you manage your frontline people, leadership skills, team working, collaboration skills is what I call a soft skills. See, in the end, we are going to teach skills or capabilities for an end objective, right? So let's take the example of customer service people, with something I can relate to. Their direct measure is that are they able to retain customers better, to buy more and retain more with the organization, whether it's an airline, hotel, insurance company, mutual fund, bank, telecom, irrespective. Yeah. Now, to be able for them to achieve that objective, there are 4 or 5 things required besides technical and functional training. They should have access to the right processes and technologies to be able to service the customer. They should understand how to handle difficult situations, right? They should know how to recover, angry customers, and they should have the ability to cross-sell products of the company. Now, if you make a list of all that is required for a person to achieve the ultimate objective of retaining and cross-selling, then measurement and convincing, right, a business head is pretty easy. So, for example, if you did drop these 4 or 5 things required and said, okay, I will fix the technology, I will fix the process. After that, it's up to the concerned person to be able to retain. Quickly, the leader will understand that unless the person understands how to handle difficult situations, how to recover and do service recovery, this picture is not complete. So I think giving a complete picture of what is required to achieve a business result and then culling out the accountability, of L&D towards soft skills is what might help you. This is what has worked in our situation. So I'm just narrating my own experience. The moment we do this complete picture, it became very clear to people what is required. That's one answer. My second answer is, you can only take soft skills measurement up to a point. This is like a belief system. Either you believe that you need to inject the right supervisory skills in your employees, or you don't believe. So besides data, it's also a question of belief, right? Data can only take you up to a certain point. So often, this debate happens in our boardroom as well, as to we are spending X number of crores on training. What is the real impact? And we have found success in being able to lay out these value drivers of business, and therefore culling out the impact of soft skills, on business. I see one more question from Chandrani Sen. It says you spoke of the ecosystem. How do you get? Just a minute, let me read it out. How do you get your senior management team to understand, have a buy-in on this? So I'm repeating myself. The only way I have been able to get a buy-in is having them list down what will help you achieve business goals. And often it is the hardware and software. To me, the hardware is technical skills, process skills, products, service. There is software required to be able to reach this to customers. And if you have read Vineet Nayar's book, Employee First, it really talks about how you make the employees capable to be able to influence the customers, right? I'll also give you a Disney World example. If you look at all the Disney parks, they give their employees exactly the same experience that they expect them to give to the customer. And that's the way they organize the back room. So this is how, at least, I've been able to influence people, showing them the entire value tree and the importance of soft skills. There's a question from Shruti Priya. It says, how can we train people on behavioral changes like being open to change, collaborate, being optimistic, etc.? What can be the possible interventions? Well, there are many choices. I'll give you examples of what I have found more successful. So, the best way to have people change mindsets is to take them through a program based on theater. I have found that to be the most effective, right? And I find it to be the most effective because theater follows unsaid rules of collaboration which are not evident to audience. So one of the rules, let's say, theater follows is you must have your co-star shine, which means that if your co-star is fumbling, forgetting, you have to make up and make sure the audience does not discover it. Now, if you look at that principle, it's something that we struggle with in the organization. So I have found, programs which deal with iceberg theory, which use theater principles to be the most useful to be able to impact mindsets, where you take people through personal experiences of how people are receiving them, how are they being perceived. That really changes, the mindset. We have also used case studies, and we have actually used case studies from India itself. So you'll find many, many organizations like Akshay Patra, etc., which have broken a few paradigms. And once you start, the Dabbawalas in Bombay, for example, right? The moment you start giving live examples and using people who have done it, instead of a theoretical person who's only heard of it. So we got the Dabbawala, director to come and speak to us on service excellence. So when you get practitioners to speak to people, it has a very different impact from people who have heard about it and are talking about case studies. So a combination of interventions related to exploring self, using theater principles, and getting people who have done it themselves to come and speak to them, I have found a combination of these three as most useful to change mindsets. Then I have a question here from RTGR. It says, what works to control attrition after a good L&D? To me, the ecosystem, Aarti. If you are able to define the full ecosystem and have the supervisor take accountability, right, that's the only way this works, according to me. A question from Ragini Mahara which says, how do we come across a performance consultant to operations? Excellent question. If the business head sees you as a provider of training, then you will be treated as so. But if you are really a performance consultant, which really means that you as an L&D professional understand what causes performance to happen, what are the obstacles coming in the way, and you can paint a picture like a business consultant to the line saying, look, here are 6 things coming in the way of us giving service or achieving this result. Out of these 6, my friend, 2 I can fix through interventions of learning and development. 4 you have to take charge of. They could be structural issues, they could be the way the incentive scheme is organized, they could be to do with recruiting practices. If you are able to have a holistic problem-solving dialogue, right? So you look at a problem, you do attribution analysis, you do root causing, and you tell the person this is what ails business performance and this is the role I can play for you. The rest you have to take charge. And when we come together, magic shall happen. If you have the capability and ability to do this kind of dialogue, then I think the value of L&D will be far above what we see today. Another question from Ragini which says, what is the best way to collaborate with business and L&D initiatives? The best way is to have them take charge, right? Saying that you have these business issues, I'm only going to help you to solve what is your problem. So you tell me what role you want me to play, and once they agree, they have to take charge of effectiveness because you are not the supervisor. Once the person goes back from a training, seminar, learning, intervention, it has to be in line with takes charge and says, I will make sure I'm able to utilize these new capabilities and help the person give out his or her best. So buy-in, sponsorship, and agreement of the role they will play, a combination of these 3 perhaps, will help you get collaboration. So then I see some private questions. So
Rajit, we also have a private question from Shruti Singh, who asks, yes?
It says, please suggest what should L&D do to ensure employees are motivated to implement learnings from any workshop or intervention. We see a good buy-in from business, but many a time we see employees not able to accept the fact that this learning can help them grow. Yeah, that's a very common dilemma, Shruti. And to me, the answer I got when I asked the same question several years back to one of the CEOs I was working with, saying that, if I want to change behavior of the front line, what is the most important thing that I should focus on? And I got a very simple but a very effective and good answer. It said, first thing you do, Rajit, is make sure that people understand how will it simplify their life. If any intervention that you're doing is able to address this basic question of how will it change the life of the recipient, and that you are able to address, then you have a buy-in. So let me give you a practical example. So when we went to the frontline customer service people with a learning intervention to improve their capability to impact customer satisfaction, the first thing we did was ask them, what will make your life simple? And believe me, these are not very difficult answers to get. So they said, if you are able to give me a decent time off from lunch, if you are able to give me technology where I can view the customer's past history, if you are able to give me empowerment to waive off small charges which delights the customer, right? If you are able to make sure that I don't get stressed during month ends and you give me extra resources, then I'll be able to service the customer. So the moment you start walking the path of how to make life simple for them so they can see joyful customers, they can get customer testimonials, and they get recognized as people who are doing well, you have a buy-in. So the moment you identify these small things which will make life simple, as a result of people going through this intervention and the promise that if there are some things coming in the way besides L&D, you will take it up with the business head, you have a game on. You have a chance of impacting the person. The other question I see is, to what extent can L&D strategies help in retention of an organization? Broadly, in my experience, there are 5 things I have discovered which really person looks for. You look for first a meaningful job. You look for fair compensation. You look for opportunities to learn, innovate, and constantly grow yourself. You look for recognition, right? And you look for place in society. And this is what I call, in my parlance, a professional net worth index of any person, irrespective of level. If you look at these 5 simple things, right? Learning to me is about a 30-40% weight. People don't leave organizations only because of money. They leave because either they have supervisors who are not able to retain them, or they find that they can't make a success basis the capabilities that they have. So if you simply map these five, you'll find that learning and development, specifically in today's and future contexts of ambiguity, and the fact will continue to be under cost pressure, so you will not be able to pay 90th percentile, salaries to people. L&D is a very, very good, cover, both for building capability as well as, making the employee feel valued, is the way I look at it. So Vikram, that's all the questions I can see, both in the private box and the public box, unless there's something that I missed out.
Yes, Rajit, there is one other question from Amit Bhide.
Okay.
And Amit asks, as explained by you about judging business impact of a particular learning intervention, what could be the evaluation parameter for training for individual or personal improvement? Is it only the feedback from a reporting manager? If not, what are the various ways to judge?
No, I would take a hard stance and say it is productivity. So let's say if you're teaching somebody time management or personal effectiveness, the ultimate measure has to be productivity. It can't be anything else. So is the individual performance improving? So if you're doing a quartile analysis, if the person was in the middle quartile, has he or she progressed to become top quartile? And has he or she been able to impact whatever he or she does in terms of productivity is the only way I would urge you to look at the net impact of training. Because each time we do training, we have to be mindful that unless it produces some impact, it is not going to serve its purpose, and the business has to start questioning the effectiveness very soon. So we have to find a way. Much difficult it is, I know. And sometimes the links between what we do as training and business results appear very tenuous, and nebulous. We have to force ourselves to be able to at least walk that path.
So Rajit, we are through with all the questions. I would recommend waiting about half a minute more to just check if somebody else has any more questions. Otherwise, we'll close out the session. Okay, fair enough. So Rajit, we have a question from Reema Dabas, and Reema asks, in your experience, what has been the biggest challenge in selling the L&D value proposition to the business leaders, and how did you attempt to resolve that?
The biggest challenge has been in them taking accountability for what enabling conditions must exist for L&D to succeed. So I'll give you a real life example. So we hire about 2,000 agents in life insurance business a month. And we take them to a training class and we do an intervention. By the way, we have an 18-month curricula for agents every week for them to become skilled sellers of life insurance. Now, unless the hiring quality is appropriate and unless they attend the class, there's nothing much that learning and development can do. Unless the sales manager who's handling these agents accompanies them for the first 7 calls to demonstrate all the skills we teach them in the class, we're going to come to a knot. So the most difficult challenge was for the business heads to take accountability of the 3 enabling processes which will then make the L&D effort complete. That was the most difficult task because, the often excuse I would hear is, this is the quality we get in India, they're after all not our employees, they're our franchises. So, whatever people can come to the class is we can't do much about it. But finally, we managed to convince them, A, we put in gates on recruitment. So what happens is each time the agent attend a training class, after the end of a week, the trainer publishes a report to the line manager talking about quality based on some parameters he or she has tested the agent on, saying, this is the quality of the person you sent me, number 1. Number 2, we have now linked monies. So whatever commissions we pay to the agents, a part of this is linked to them attending the training class. It's called training reimbursement, right? So it was a difficult task for us to have the line agree on these measures. But the moment, we move on to these measures, then it becomes very easy to measure the impact of training on productivity of the agents. So that, to my mind, is a very difficult conversation, to have. But if you're able to have that effectively and make it very specific and tangible, and have line change a few things to enable training, I think you have a chance of winning.
Rajit, we have another question from Ragini Mahara, who asks, what is the best way to create a learning culture and ensure everyone speaks the same language, top to bottom?
That that could be the subject of a full webinar, but I'll try to answer it specifically. I think as you said to, one is you can use, as I've quoted, many researches are now available. They were not available, a decade back, which are linking now organization capability to success, whether it's the health index or the impact on, EBITDA, etc. Those researches are now available for business heads to read and figure out, what are people doing. That's one, which we can do, right? Second is, as you draw up your organization's goals, I have found great value in drawing a value tree, meaning what are the drivers of these goals and success. So what inputs need to go in to be able to achieve these business results. Once you start drawing a list of input drivers, you'll find that capabilities and learning, find a prominent place in those drivers. It comes naturally to a business head once he or she starts drawing the list of inputs will produce the output. So beyond products, technology, processes, the bucket of people, within that, retention, talent, and capability often find space in the top 3 or 4, which I've seen, business heads do. So drawing an input tree to achieve output is another great method of, doing that. Third, broaden your definition of learning. Don't restrict yourself, please, to just training interventions. Learning means what culture we need to have, how will we capture intellectual property, and sometimes that's a very valid concern the business head has, and that strikes home. So I'll give you a live example. We have people who do underwriting. Underwriting means when we get a life insurance proposal, people make sure that the life that we are insuring is healthy, right? Now, over the years, given India the way it is, given our quality of medical diagnostic centers, we have developed some underwriting rules based on experience, which, if implemented, make sure we don't have losses. Now, capturing that information, capturing how cases are written onto a learning platform, to me is also learning and development. And there are some parts of hard-hitting things like this which come very easy to business. They understand it, right? That we should become process-dependent, not people-dependent. We should have an archival of organization history and knowledge so that we are able to train newcomers and not lose value. So if you start broadening your learning definition as a third point, you find acceptability comes easier. And fourth is making sure that along with the HR head and business head, you define the entire ecosystem in which learning will succeed. So a combination of these 3 or 4 things perhaps will help you, put learning and development as the top 5 priorities and impact business results. Vikram, I'll have to log off. I have a meeting. Unless there is a last pressing question that you have, I'm happy to answer that.
Sure. Rajit, one last question from Farah Mateen. And Farah asks, it becomes difficult to evaluate training effectiveness for soft skills program. Is there a suggestion from your end?
Okay, so this question is coming often, so let's take a real example to be able to answer that. I'll give you a real life example. So in 2002, when we were 2 years old as an organization, we did a Gallup study, and it came out that on the question of teamwork and collaboration, we were 58th percentile. So as we started to understand the question better, we discovered that this lack of collaboration quotient in the organization is actually impacting all processes which have handoffs. So let's say there are intersections in the organization which produce a certain product or a service. And if you are low on collaboration and team quotient, you'll find that A, you are taking more time to launch something, B, you are becoming bureaucratic and lot of energy is getting wasted, and therefore your meetings also are not efficient. So we said, what should we do? And we looked at a wonderful, intervention called Generative Team Building, run by an organization called Air1 in Bangalore. And we said, how should we run this intervention? And the consultant that time was pretty clear. A, it has to start from the top. B, it has to percolate across the 7,000, 8,000 people that we had in the organization. C, every team, intact team or unit going through this intervention must take up what will they improve right? And you shall measure the results only in terms of, has your intersection management improved? Has your speed to market of launching products improved? So take only hard-hitting measures. And exactly that we did. It took us 2 years, by the way, to percolate this intervention across every department, across every person, for them to, A, to have a common language, B, start impacting some of the things we wanted to impact. And in 2005, when we did the third Gallup survey, we had moved from 50th percentile to 72nd percentile. Now that is one impact in the Gallup score of how doing the intervention, creating the right enabling conditions helped us increase our collaboration quotient. But what really happened was that our speed to market increased. Now once the business had started seeing that, that program was, on demand. We didn't have to then push. It was always on demand, people saying, I want to do this for my unit. So I'm giving you one live illustration of what I have gone through. So the important learning for me was, A, you have to be very specific of what is it that you're trying to impact as a business goal through this soft skill training. Much tougher task to do, that I agree, but you have to force yourself to do it, and B, make sure you define all the conditions around it which will make it successful. So that's the way I have found success in answering this question in my experience.
All right, Rajat. So I think we are anyway running short on time, so we could probably wrap up. Thank you very much for sharing with us these invaluable experiences and insights on the subject of the business case of L&T Investments. I'm positive that much like me, all of the participants are taking away food for thought on how to manage and change mindsets while thinking and viewing about L&T Investments and the transformations required to impact business results. I certainly hope that each participant has also found a fresh perspective while thinking on the question of why L&T. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for attending this webinar and for the very thought-provoking questions. While we've tried to address the majority of the queries that sprung up during the discussion, we'll be sure to pass along any additional queries that you may have to Rajat.
More than happy.
I'd like to bring...
Go ahead, Vikram.
Yes,
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Rajat.
Thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you so much, Rajat. So, ladies and gentlemen, with this, I'd like to bring this webinar to a close. Thank you, and we look forward to hosting you again.